These men get with other women right after they break up with you, is what we're going to explore today. So, why is it that some men immediately attach to other women right after things end with you? And today we're going to discuss why getting over such an experience can be rather painful. So, what I'm about to share with you is a hypothesis of mine. It's a theory of mine. It's merely a perspective, it's not fact. And while it's not a fact, it certainly feels true. And we're going to talk about secure and insecure attachment style people. So, if you're not familiar with the work of or if you're not familiar with love attachment style, really quickly, I invite you to purchase these three books. I invite you to purchase the book Attached by Amir Levine, Rachel Heller. There's a link below to get a copy of the book. I definitely recommend getting Wired for Love by Dr. Stan Tatkin. And I highly recommend getting the book Learning Love by Thais Gibson. By the way, I've had her on my channel as well as Dr. Stan Tatkin. So really quickly, and it looks like my phone is on, so I want to make sure I turn this off. Um, we're going to talk about avoidant attachment style men. Now, again, coming back to secure and insecure attachment styles, basically, this is how we bond with another human being. Do we do it in a secure way or an insecure way? And within insecure attachment styles, there's three primary attachments within that. There is avoidant, which there's basically a fearful type of avoidant or a dismissive avoidant, or there's anxious, okay? Now, avoidants oftentimes struggle emotionally to receive love. Sometimes they struggle to actually accept a love from another person. These people have oftentimes had struggling or a childhood where they were dismissed. There was a lot of volatility. There was a lot of anger, possibly. And they withdrew from actually being able to bond with another person in a more securely healthy way. Oftentimes, avoidant men and or women can be emotionally unavailable, not very emotionally expressive, not very emotionally generous, not very emotionally appreciative in a relationship. So if you've experienced that kind of man in your life, which certainly so many women have, it can be rather frustrating to be with this type of man, particularly if after your relationship ended, you find that he literally attaches himself to a new person. Now, the anxious person, and by the way, this is something I can relate to because I'm very clear I have an anxious attachment style. We are rather needy. We fear abandonment. We fear rejection. We fear, in fact, for us, being loved by another person feels like we love ourselves, okay? When someone else is loving us, we can feel love for ourselves. Now, this is a generalized view of anxious and avoidant attachment styles. But one of the reasons why I think why women find themselves in circumstances with avoidant men is because the avoidant behavior is rather attractive. See, avoidant people tend to be more confident outwardly, and they almost seem aloof with their feelings, so they don't seem needy like the anxious person. And I suspect that a significant percentage of men are avoidant attachment styles, and a significant percentage of women are anxious attachment styles. And when you ever heard opposites attract, well, this is what's actually happening. Or if you've ever heard the term polarity. Now, I know a lot of it in the woo-woo community will have you believe it has to do with something masculine, feminine, but I also believe that there's a polarity when you have an avoidant person and an anxious person together, because these two kind of come and go like the polarity within a battery, if you will. And one of the things about why avoidant men are so attractive is oftentimes, if you're an anxious woman, you might have had one or both of your parents a bit avoidant, and that seems radically familiar to you. It triggers old wounds. This is why avoidant people could be very intoxicating to that anxious person, because that anxious person is struggling to love themselves. And so they're drawn to that person that initially gives them love. Now, Here's the tricky part. Since men oftentimes chase physical intimacy in the very beginning, it can be rather confusing because it doesn't make sense. If a person is aloof, emotionally constipated, they're struggling, they're emotionally unavailable, they have a hard time receiving love, well, then why would these men pursue women if that's their innate behavior? See, this is where it gets tricky because our biology first starts the engine. We are usually driven by the little head versus the big head, if you will. And because of that, a lot of times we are operating from a certain biological programming, and men can oftentimes say all kinds of things to get a woman in the bedroom. But isn't it rather fascinating the amount of effort men will take to get you in the bedroom, and immediately after they've been physically intimate with you, all of a sudden they go, I don't have feelings for you anymore. If you've ever heard the term chemistry, I want you to recognize that when we are on the hunt, when we're on the chase, chemicals get released from our brain into our body, particularly dopamine and testosterone, that says, chase, chase, chase. I know you women have heard it. Men love the chase, but do you actually think they're chasing a relationship? No. They're chasing that physical intimacy. And once that's been satisfied, in many cases, we come back to our baseline and we're like, I don't know if I like this person anymore. So this can be really tricky because at first, an avoidant man might come on strong, and then little by little, you might notice that his emotions start to withdraw. He starts to create distance. He has a difficult time receiving a compliment. And if you find, and by the way, it's not to suggest these men don't enter into a relationship. Guess what? A lot of avoidant men are actual serial monogamists. Bump, bump, bump. They are actual serial monogamists. In other words, they will enter into a relationship because men oftentimes nest into a relationship. When they feel comfortable, when they feel safe, they will nest. N-E-S-T, nest. Now, what happens in these relationships, and this is where we're getting to why they immediately oftentimes choose someone new after your relationship ends, is ladies, I want you all ask yourself, first off, ask yourself, have I been in a relationship with an avoidant? Either an emotionally unavailable man, emotionally constipated man, a person who was commitment phobic. If you've ever experienced that, raise your hand, hit that like button and say, yes, I've experienced an avoidant man. Now, if you were in a significant enough relationship with an avoidant man, basically between 1 to 3 years, roughly, in that time, if you gave that man a tremendous amount of love, you gave this man a tremendous amount of care, you demonstrated that you were a wonderful partner to him. Okay. Most likely this person struggled because he's not used to someone giving genuine love. And because of that, they struggle internally and they reject genuine love. And yet during this time, you are actually rewiring to some degree this person's emotional regulatory system because you are giving him genuine love that he didn't experience in childhood. He didn't experience it in one of his past relationships. Maybe he had a contentious child or a contentious relationship and maybe had a traumatic childhood. And for the first time in his life, you have been giving him what his little kid has been searching for all his life. But because there's been this push-pull between the two of you, and because he wasn't able to fully emotionally commit in the early stages of the relationship, he got overwhelmed with all of the amount of love that you gave him. And he had to exit because it was too much for him. But here is why he chooses and ends up falling in love with the next person he meets, is during that relationship, you are actually rewiring him in many cases. Now, you're probably hearing this and go, holy fucking shit, Jonathan, that sucks. I did all this work to make him better. He didn't do anything for me to help me. Well, yes, he did. And this is the painful part of this experience because I believe And again, this is a hypothesis. This is a theory. There's no facts to base this. This is something I certainly would like to explore deeper with a qualified therapist. But what happens is if the avoidant heals during the relationship, guess what happens to the anxious person? Their healing starts when the relationship ends, when they feel like their world is shattered, when they feel like they've lost a treasured relationship and they have to face their fears and their traumas of losing a treasured relationship. And in that period of time, there's an opportunity to do deep healing work, and that is to love on oneself, to love on oneself. Sadly, if the avoidant got 1.5 years of healthy rewiring, the anxious person needs 1 year and 1.5 years of rewiring themselves because they most likely got attached for the wrong reason, and the healing is going to happen after the fact. Has this ever happened to you? A relationship ended with an avoidant person, and that's when you had to do the deep healing work? Maybe you sought out a therapist. Maybe you sought out a coach, and you began processing and examining all the choices you made that led up to this part, because most likely you gave your power away in the relationship. Most likely there were early signs with this avoidant person, but you did what so many people do. You put on rose-colored glasses. You took red flags and painted them green. You see, because the fact of the matter is, an anxious person that accepts from the very early on that avoidant personality, that avoidant attachment style, that means there was a deficiency inside the anxious person that wanted external love. They needed external validation to feel good about themselves. And what happens is you get radically attached to someone, and it can be gut-wrenchingly painful when that relationship gets severed. And then all of a sudden you find out he's with a new person. That's because you basically helped rewire him, and he was capable for the first time in his life to lean into love, and you feeling like, hey, this fucking sucks. Wait a minute. He gets to ride off in the sunset and I don't. See, here's the thing about the healing journey. There is no right or wrong of how this happens. The journey to self-love, and if you're not familiar with my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, and Spiritual Work, has nothing to do with anxious attachment style or avoidance. I invite you to read the book because the journey to self-love is an individual journey. Now, does the avoidant end up experiencing self-love? I'm not so sure they do. I believe those people that do deep healing after the end of a relationship, that do deep work on themselves, that actually go to a therapist or a coach or a counselor and start to rewire themselves. I don't know if the avoidant person actually, you really helped him feel love that he hadn't felt before. But that doesn't mean he's healed fully in a space of self-love. So let's just say this. This is all hypothesis. This isn't based on fact. But what's most important is whether they find a new person or not. And it's not about you finding a new person. It's learning to find that partner within yourself. Esther Perel, who wrote the book Mating in Captivity, says the quality of our life is predicated by the quality of our relationships. And the most important relationship you'll ever have in your life is the relationship with self. So who cares if he met someone after the end of the relationship? What matters most is the relationship you have with yourself. And I invite you to do the deep healing work. Because here's what's going to happen when you've done the inner work and you find yourself up. By the way, here's what happens when you do the inner work. When you meet another avoidant, you immediately detach. In fact, you almost have your intuition, your spider senses are firing at such a rate because you've done that work to love on yourself that you can spot an avoidant literally by the very first text message. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but I certainly believe that when you've done the inner work, you are better prepared for every relationship going forward in your life. And if you meet your life partner or not, that's okay too. I invite you all to marry yourself in such a way that, you know what, you're okay whether or not somebody comes into your life or not. Certainly cultivate dear friendships. Make sure you cultivate, dear family members. But nurture that little kid inside of you, because that's going to bring you the most joy in life. Hey, is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know if it did. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Post a comment below. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And make sure you hit the notification bell on your phone as well. And if you want to connect with me directly, hey, my whole area of expertise is to help fine-tune your intuition. So there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery, where you can have direct access to me on a regular basis. You can get my dating vows. You can get the books I recommend, all listed below in the show notes. And you can follow me on Instagram.